Hey, I'm Rock, a PhD student at the University of Washington. I'm pleased to share our new work. That's important. But how computer science researchers anticipate unintended consequences of their research innovations. This is a joint work with Kimberly, Jiachen, and my advisor Katharina Reinecke here at the Wild Lab at the University of Washington. Computer science research has led to many breakthrough innovations, but has also been scrutinized for enabling technology that has negative and unintended consequences for society. And I showed you a lot of news headlines just now, but what do I really mean by unintended consequences? Already in 1936, a famous sociologist, Robert Merton, has coined the term unanticipated consequences to describe unforeseen, desirable or undesirable outcomes of one's action. Today, most of us refer to the unforeseen outcomes, the results of policies or technologies, as unintended consequences. However, some have argued that this term conflation has caused a loss of nuance. In fact, unintended consequences can be either anticipated or unanticipated. In this paper, we used unintended consequences to purposefully broaden the discussion to include both anticipated and unanticipated, positive or negative unintended side effects of technology on society. I'm going to use UCs in the remainder of this video that stands for unintended consequences. UCs have never been a really new term, but not until recently do various CS disciplines start to address unintended consequences of technology as a community. For example, conferences require ethics statements and introduce ethics committees. The SIGCHI community has been organizing workshops to address unintended consequences as well. And companies have introduced guidelines, even though primarily in the AI space. Given all these establishments in the research community and the increasing amount of news headlines, what we are curious is how do researchers actually anticipate UCs in practice, if at all? To answer this question, we want to understand specifically, do researchers anticipate UCs in practice? If so, how do they approach it? What barriers do they encounter in the process? To explore these questions, we interviewed 20 researchers who worked on applied research that led to systems in real world. By researchers, we focused on academic researchers in this study. We interviewed researchers from various disciplines such as accessibility, AR/VR, CV, HCI, NLP, etc. We interviewed 10 PhD students or postdocs and 10 professors. Using inductive thematic analysis, we came up with 12 top-level codes, developed into 3 high-level themes. We will only cover a few of these codes in this video, but please see our paper for more details. First, current attitude and practice, important but rarely take actions proactively. It's noteworthy that all of our 20 participants emphasized the importance to consider UCs throughout the research process, but none actually acknowledged proactively considering them in practice. We found that participants are occasionally engaged in informal and serendipitous conversation about UCs. For example, P16 mentioned talking about UC is kind of something that just happens. Another practice is to commonly react to rather than anticipate UCs. For example, P10 received a whole bunch of comments on Reddit on their research video. This was something that actually led them to change their research topics in the end. Another attitude is an underestimation of potential UCs because their goal is to produce societal benefits. In other words, research is ultimately to produce societal benefits, right? For example, P6 commented, by design, my research is really geared toward mitigating the problem that's out there, so it doesn't really make sense for me to worry about the negative consequences. Another attitude is that IRB applications are mistakenly relied upon to alert researchers. We use IRB to determine whether a human-facing study is ethical. However, a lot of studies don't involve humans directly. For example, an AI project uses data not directly from humans, but can have profound implications on society. This is a quote about this confusion coming from P16. Now, to put the current practice on a timeline. In a research project, we may define the problem, define the solutions, design prototypes, deploy our study, draft papers, publication, and post-publication deployment. While in an ideal world, we could think about unintended consequences all the time throughout the process. However, currently, we could only formally think about the social impact of our work when writing grant, or applying to IRB, or writing an ethics statement. The second theme is researchers lack formal method and guidelines for anticipating UCs. First, there is a lack of systematic guidelines for brainstorming about UCs and for knowing how to anticipate UCs. For example, P3 mentioned at what point if we could potentially have some very negative consequences. Who should we bring in? What kind of outside expert would be the most appropriate for this? Another barrier is that sharing and learning from prior experiences is largely unsupported, both individually and at a research community level. For example, P16 mentioned there should be a way for me as a researcher so that I have the responsibility to go over to that paper whenever it's published and comment on it and be like, here's an updated version or whatever, so that the community knows about the UCs. Finally, we observed that academic practices strain efforts to anticipate UCs. Considering UC was additional work that might conflict with participants' goals to publish quickly. For example, P3 mentioned, I think we all have the tendency to try to move fast and think, oh no, I don't want to stop and think about UCs. I want to keep going and get the results. This is especially true for junior researchers. With our findings, what do we do now? And we propose to collect and disseminate case studies of UCs that were the result of CS innovations. Specifically, this could be an information resource on what went wrong in the past, and this resource could also help teach new and experienced researchers. Collectively learn from not only the past mistakes, but also the solutions. We should also increase incentives to investigate UCs at various stages of the research process. For example, we could learn from the concept of pre-registration to pre-register UCs. More importantly, we should refrain finding UCs in the middle of the research process as an opportunity rather than finger pointing. We should also allow authors to add lessons learned post-publication so that others have the opportunity to learn from this experience. In our paper, we have also proposed many other short and long-term goals for us to work on. And of course, our study is not without limitation. We only interviewed 20 researchers at R1 institutions in North America, and we have yet to hear opinions from R2 and smaller colleges. We also only focused on academic researchers in CS, which may have missed opinions not covered in our sample, including industry researchers. But overall, we are excited about the future of this line of work and how our work and future work can not only find new pain points in anticipating unintended consequences, but also design methods and tools to support researchers in doing so.